In the 1900s, journalists in both the US and Britain revolutionized their field with trends like yellow journalism and muckraking. However, many journalists hesitated to run campaigns against rich and powerful companies for fear of putting themselves out of business. Haraold Evans, a young man who loved the news and decided early in life to become a journalist, saw the potential of investigative journalism in this context. As he advanced in his career, World War II broke out in 1939, and Nazi Germany recruited top scientists to aid in their war effort. After the war, many of these scientists set up shop around the globe, particularly in Germany. This set the stage for Haraold Evans as an investigative journalist. His exposing the injustice of Chemie Grunenthal and the Thalidomide Scandal in Britain challenged the company. He empowered the public to stand up against large corporations, setting a new standard for investigative journalism. During World War II, Otto Ambros, a prominent Nazi scientist and industrialist who had direct access to Adolf Hitler, developed a drug called thalidomide as a nerve agent antidote. He oversaw the drug's mass production and even experimented on prisoners of war and concentration camp inmates without their consent. After the war, Ambros was captured and put on trial for his war crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to prison for several years. While Ambros was serving his sentence, two Germans who were former Nazi Party members used their connections and knowledge of the Nazi regime to raid two Jewish-owned companies and establish a new company called Chemie Grunenthal in Germany. They later hired Ambros as an advisor and several other Nazi scientists, making Chemie Grunenthal a haven for wanted and convicted war criminals who had conducted their experiments in concentration camps and valued human life as relatively little. Despite the lack of proper testing in clinical trials, the company released thalidomide as a sedative and morning sickness medication. They conducted only simple safety tests on animals, not on pregnant women. They didn't even bother to conduct long-term studies on humans or animals before releasing the drug, like on which part of the body the thalidomide was broken down. They also failed to consider the potential for the drug to cross the placenta and affect the development of fetuses. Grunenthal marketed thalidomide aggressively across several countries as entirely safe for human consumption and as a cure for nausea and vomiting during pregnancy, also known as morning sickness. However, in 1959, a woman gave birth to a child with phocomelia of the arms and legs. Over time, more and more children were born with these terrible deformities until an all-out epidemic had broken out of very rare teratogenicity. Eventually, all doctors found concrete evidence that thalidomide was the cause of the deformities and notified Grunenthal, whose executives fought hard to stop the news from getting public. However, eventually the news became public and distillers took the drug off shelves across the world. After the tragedy, much of the public felt vexed for being left in the dark and was angry at how little money was given for the damages caused. There was even major doubt on what had caused it. However, many assured that Grunenthal was not in the wrong, saying that they had done proper tests on thalidomide and there was no reason to think that thalidomide could have been harmful. One irate doctor serving as a pharmacological advisor to thalidomide parents finally reached his limit and visited the Sunday Times editor, Haraold Evans. He sold Evans 10,000 internal documents from distillers to help them write articles on the truth of how distillers help cover up the thalidomide tragedy.
Well, I was absolutely astounded. It actually came on my desk a long time ago when I was editor of a paper in the north of England, in Darlington. And I saw pictures of these babies, and I was absolutely horrified. But that was in the early 1960s. When it came on my desk as editor of the Sunday Times, I was amazed that compensation and justice for these children had not been achieved, and that was in 1968. So I began then to investigate the whole tragedy.
Evans hoped that all of the documents they had gained would shed light on how thalidomide was made, tested, marketed, and sold, so he had the team categorize and analyze every single one. The Times began by devoting 4 pages of the paper to a detailed account of thalidomide and Chemie Grunenthal. Immediately after this, Grunenthal responded that they would press charges for contempt of court if the Times did not take it down. The Times responded vigorously, and Grunenthal dropped the charges. From then on, the cases started rolling in to the point where Evans could not post a single article without being arrested.
So in 1972, we began a campaign in the paper. The first point of the campaign was to get more money for the children. We had to run a risk of contempt of court, and one of our articles was banned under contempt of court by the House of Lords.
By the autumn of 1971, Evans was frustrated that it had been 4 years since the Sunday Times received those 10,000 documents, and he had barely written anything. Meanwhile, the Times was keeping a close eye on the Thalidomide families and found that the Stillers had lowered its offered compensation. This problem required a constant, sustained, and robust campaign that Evans could not lead without being shut up by the law. That was until his team found that by focusing on the moral arguments and being impartial about the legal aspects, Evans could post without breaking the law of contempt. When Jack Ashley, chairman in the House of Commons of the All-Party Committee on the Disabled, read the Sunday Times, he immediately promised his full support to fix the problems presented. With his help, Evans could transfer their campaign to Parliament. Ashley and Evans got an overwhelming number of MPs to sign the motion. They even did it with incredible flair, taking every chance to embarrass the Stillers. Evans and Ashley then led a full-scale parliamentary debate against the Stillers that resulted with the notion that the children needed £20 million to repair the damages caused by thalidomide. The continuing campaign led by Evans would eventually influence shareholders and propagandists to take up the fight against the Stillers until it decided to settle the matter out of court. The Stillers and Kemi Grunenthal ended up paying £28 million over 7 years to thalidomide children.
But we succeeded in 4 months in getting the money from about £3 million up to 20-odd million pounds for the children. So that transformed the compensation.
The £28 million eventually paid for all the damages caused by thalidomide and helped many children and families cope with their situation. The companies later publicly apologized for their actions, but the public is still waiting for an apology from the Wirtz family who founded Kemi Grunenthal.
I've been disabled since day one. With each thalidomide, we all live different lives. Well, a lot of thalidomiders are actually grandparents now. But I was a late developer and became a dad at 49. My mother said, "You'll never have a job, you'll never get married." She lived long enough to see her grandkids and she loved them to bits. If Angela was my full-time carer, it wouldn't be the same. You know, she's like me wife, me lover. I don't want her to be my carer. I'd be totally lost without the trust, to be honest. I got a loan from the trust to buy this house. So the trust gave me a loan, which initially was a 10-year loan. But then Diageo put more money into the trust 2 years ago. So it went down from 10 years to 6 years. So the house is paid for now, thank goodness.
Over time, Haraold Evans' journalism on the thalidomide tragedy affected drug testing laws that we now use today and personal injury compensation laws, as well as the law of contempt that have protected billions of people globally from future tragedies and injustice. The frontier that Haraold Evans pioneered in investigative journalism continues to inspire many people today and has created a brand new mindset to finding justice.
It was Harry's greatest achievement, I think, to change British law in favour of press freedom, in favour, give more power to the powerless.
He blasted open some of the legal challenges to journalism in ways from which we've all benefited.
Broke open a kind of cabal, and he changed the way journalism functioned in this country. And suddenly everybody wanted to be like that. Perhaps, we'll never see anything quite like it again, unfortunately.
What made him so unique as an editor was his deep human curiosity, his remarkable tenacity, and a moral seriousness.
We thank Sir Haraold Evans for his amazing work in making the society better and for trailblazing the frontier of investigative journalism.